Hello, I'm National Weather Service meteorologist Peter Chan with a special weather update concerning the stormy conditions we are anticipating now through the upcoming weekend. It's going to have a broad impact across much of the state, and this is just a heads up to make you aware of what's going on at this time. We are recording this around noon on Thursday, January 23rd. What we're looking at is right now there are high wind warnings for the eastern Aleutians up into the Alaska Peninsula, and eventually stronger winds will develop across the Alaska range. And within these areas, we could see wind gusts as high as 70 to 80 miles an hour, especially as we go through this afternoon and through at least the early portion of overnight this Thursday night into Friday morning. The other issue, coastal flood warning for the Kuskokwim Bay. We're looking at 3 to 6 feet above normal highest tide levels. The water is being pushed up by strong southerly winds. Meanwhile, we have a lot of moisture that's worked up along the west side of the state, spreading inland, and it's creating areas of moderate to heavy snow, along with strong gusty winds creating blowing and drifting snow. And then if that's not enough, we have another area of low pressure that'll be coming up out of the North Pacific with quite a surge of warm, moist air that's going to lead to heavy rainfall and gusty winds, impacting a broad area of south central Alaska, including the Matsu Valleys and the Anchorage Bowl, where there could be some minor flooding from the runoff of that rain on the frozen ground. Now, looking at the satellite imagery as of this Thursday morning, we have an area of low pressure lifting out of the North Pacific. It is currently just crossing the central Aleutians. There's another low sitting up in the Gulf of Anadyr in western or eastern Russia. This is an initial low in front that has pushed some snowfall up into interior areas of the state, particularly along the Brooks Range back toward the Chukchi Sea coast. But there's a whole nother surge of moisture that's coming up right now across the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula. And if that's not enough, during the course of this weekend, another moist low is going to lift northward out of the North Pacific and spread that moisture all up along the western Gulf, which means it's going to force it up through Cook Inlet, up the Susitna Valley, and along areas of Prince William Sound, where that heavy rainfall will be possible. Quick check of what we got going on. What's the setup for this? We have the one initial low that's up there in the Gulf of Anadyr in eastern Russia. That's going to wane as far as being a player. The next low, not all that deep, but it has a very strong wind field out east ahead of it, currently crossing the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula toward the Pribilofs. And that is the wind field that's going to be riding up along the southwest coast and really impacting Kuskokwim Bay as we go through this evening and into early Saturday morning. Again, the potential for some coastal flooding there due to that push of water coinciding with high tide. Now, high pressure sitting out in the North Pacific south of the Gulf is providing the pressure gradient for those strong winds between the high in that area of the North Pacific and the low that's now crossing through the central Aleutians. And as I mentioned, there's still another low that's going to come out of the North Pacific and send a big batch of moisture and gusty winds northward all along the Alaska Peninsula, Cook Inlet into south central. So we have a hazardous weather map showing current watches, warnings, advisories, special weather statements. I'm going to start with what's currently of note. We have the high wind warning for the eastern Aleutians riding up through the southern portion of the Alaska Peninsula. Winds could gust as high as 70 to 80 miles an hour in locations, especially with if you're on the southward, southeastward facing slopes or sides of these land areas. And that'll be now through about shortly after midnight this Thursday night into early Friday morning. Those winds will continue lifting northwards, not quite as strong, but coming into Kuskokwim Bay. So we have that coastal flood warning for the areas along the Kuskokwim Delta. Water levels could be 3 to as much as 6 feet above the normal highest tide when we get the high tide coming in there overnight, early Friday morning. Meanwhile, we have moisture that's pushed inland. We have a plethora of winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings from areas just north of the Alaska Range, running all up along the Brooks Range, and then the western portion of the North Slope. We're going to be seeing another wave of moisture coming in this weekend. So there will be additional adjustments to these advisories and warning. And then for The areas around South Central, including the Kenai Peninsula, around Prince William Sound, Anchorage Bowl, up through the Susitna Valley, including the Mat-Su Valley areas of Wasilla and Palmer, the potential for heavier rainfall here from Friday late morning through the upcoming weekend. We're looking at perhaps 1.5 to 2.5 inches of rain just in the Anchorage Bowl area. As that moisture rides north, it's looking like it could stay rain up there, Talkeetna to Broad Pass, with 2 to maybe as much as 5 inches of rain in that upper portion of the Susitna Valley. And then areas along Prince William Sound could see 3 to as much as 6 inches of rainfall. Now you factor that in with gusty winds. We have frozen ground. That rain is going to run off. It's going to cause flooding, at least minor flooding of some of the creeks and rivers, but we're also going to have ponding of water, especially in any sort of urban setting like around Anchorage or, say, Wasilla or Palmer. So be aware there could be some lowland flooding and ponding of water on roadways that could impede travel. And also just keep an eye on your basement if you have a crawl space and is susceptible to this type of flooding in the wintertime. So the wind field very strong this afternoon, lifting across the eastern Aleutians, southern Alaska Peninsula into the southeast Bering. As we go into tonight, still quite strong there, that area from around Kuskokwim Bay south into the far eastern Aleutians and southern parts of the Alaska Peninsula. And then notice that wind field does weaken by Friday afternoon, but we have another push of southerly winds, not as strong, but that's going to transport a lot of moisture northward across the western Gulf up into Cook Inlet as we go into especially Friday night, Saturday, and into Sunday. Also, winds will be quite strong along the Beaufort Sea Coast, Chukchi Sea Coast there in the vicinity of between Point Hope and east of Utqiagvik to New Exit. Those areas could see blizzard conditions at times because of those strong winds and the snow that will be falling. A quick check of expected precipitation. Notice the focus. Most of the precipitation for this Thursday is out over the west side of the state and in along some of the coastal mountains into South Central. But more importantly, notice how the precipitation on Friday begins to line up with that stream of moisture coming out of the North Pacific, riding along the Alaska Peninsula, along either side of the Alaska Range. That's why areas of the southwest interior around McGrath could see 1 to 2 feet of snow, and then to add misery to it, add on 1/4 inch of rain on top of that later this weekend as that warmer air takes hold. And then we find the rain overspreading South Central and increasing as we go through Friday, especially Friday night, into Saturday and Sunday. So this is just the general precipitation outlook. Notice it's focused along and south of the Alaska Range through Cook Inlet, and especially along the eastern Kenai and areas of Prince William Sound, where I mentioned some locations could easily pick up 3 to as much as 6 inches of rainfall in this time frame. So this is just a heads up to everyone. We have active weather coming through. A stormy pattern will continue now through the weekend into early next week. It looks like it could turn much colder across much of the mainland next week once the system finally gets by. For additional weather information, please visit weather.gov/ARH. Thank you for watching.